Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and welcome to the show today. Yet another amazing episode. We have my good friend, Dr. Amit Goswami, coming on to talk about quantum economics. How exciting. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healings, and psychic readings. So if there's stuff going on in your life, give me a call, send me an email, and we can set up a time for a private consultation. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading their free 50-page guide, appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Amit Goswami, and we're going to get him on the air and find out all about economics, quantum style. Amit Goswami is the author of the highly successful textbook, Quantum Mechanics. His 2-volume textbook for non-scientists, The Physics View of Nature, traces the decline and rediscovery of the concept of God within science. Goswami has also written 8 popular books based on his research on quantum physics and consciousness. In his seminal book, The Self-Aware Universe, he solved the quantum measurement problem, elucidating the famous observer effect while paving the path to a new paradigm of science based on the primacy of consciousness. He calls himself a quantum activist. He has appeared in the film What the Bleep Do We Know? His new book is called Quantum Economics. His webpage is amitgoswami.org. Please welcome Dr. Amit Goswami. Hi, Amit. It is so wonderful to have you back on the show.
Hi, Rita. Good to be back.
You know, your people sent me an email and wanted to know if I'd be interested in having you on the show. I was like, of course.
Thank you so much for being so kind to me.
Well, I love having you on because we always have these very hearty, deep conversations that...
that is true.
Yes. So let's see. So today we're going to be talking about quantum economics. And to me, you're a consciousness, subtle energy guy. So why economics?
Well, that is the point that even surprised me. You know, all this happened because of a synchronicity. I had a conference with Dalai Lama in 1999, where he encouraged the 30 or so scientists and visionaries to apply our new paradigm, developing new paradigm to social problems. So that impressed me, and I did a little bit of that, wrote a book called Quantum Doctor. But imagine my surprise when in 2005, I got a call from President of World Business Academy, Rinaldo Butoco, who wanted me to join the Academy as a fellow. But of course I said, I know nothing about economics. That's one subject I have never studied, never had a course. And he says, no, you have a good worldview. So you must bring the impact of that worldview to economics. So that's how it all started. I wrote a couple of papers, but then it was still slow going. It just got finished last year, so you know it has been a long time. But I think the product has been good. It does. I'm happy to say that quantum economics is a natural extension of Adam Smith's capitalism, and not an unnatural modifications that scientific materialism has done to it, which has given us more disasters than the original version. But this new version will finally produce a complete rendition of what capitalism can be. And this is why we call it quantum economics, because just like Newtonian physics was not complete without the idea of possibilities and potentialities, that quantum physics brings. Similarly, Adam Smith, capitalism is not complete without the idea of subtle energies, science of experience that quantum physics within consciousness brings us to.
Who is Adam Smith?
Well, of course, he is the earth-shaking personality who gave us the basic idea of capitalism in an unsuspected book called The Wealth of Nations. That was in the 18th century. So he really gets us going, and you can see the success. This revolutionized economics, revolutionized our society. Most of the countries today are following still capitalism, although not meaning the same thing in every country. Some countries, like in Europe, it's more like socialism because they have put in a lot of social good, which the original version of Adam Smith capitalism leaves implicit, not explicit. We have brought in some social good through what is called Keynesian economics, but not enough. So quantum economics, again, another way of thinking of it is that it really brings in a lot of social good through the concept of this higher satisfaction of higher needs, higher experiences that developed countries are quite ready for. When you live in America and you live in Europe and all these developed economies, the material stuff doesn't satisfy anymore. You take it for granted, and you should. That is what a developed economy means. So we are hungry for satisfying our higher needs, our vital energy needs that we feel, our mental needs, meaningful tasks, meaningful jobs, and of course even value needs, spiritual values. We need spirituality in our life more and more, and we are not getting it from scientific materialism-oriented economics that we live today.
Are you suggesting that we're moving further up Maslow's scale of hierarchy, that we're looking to move out of a materialistic world, or we would maybe be happier if we move out of that into a higher mental realm kind of thing, spiritual realm?
Wonderful. So that's the question that turned me on too. See, I'm not only Rinaldo Butocco, I also knew about Maslow's work, and that happened because I was on a radio show back in the 80s, I think, maybe even earlier, with a business professor at the University of Oregon where I worked. And this businessman brings about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we talk about it. So it made an impression that, businesses even then, well, at least some business people, I mean, this is a professor of business, not exactly a businessman, but still they're thinking about something as esoteric as mental meanings and spiritual values. That made an impression on me. Of course, as a physicist too, I'm sure he was equally surprised that a physicist was thinking about consciousness. So we both got along just fine, and that idea remained in my mind. So when I was back picking up the inspiration from Rinaldo, I immediately thought of Maslow, and I must say that the basic idea of putting these needs into the economic equation also came from Maslow. Maslow was helpful.
Well, I agree. Is that why you think capitalism isn't working? Because we're not getting our needs met?
Well, that's not the primary reason. Capitalism is not working primarily because the material dimension is finite. It's finite, and we cannot keep on infinitely expanding economy on a finite resource. That's the main reason. Of course, social good, we're not putting that in. That's also a main reason. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if we satisfy these needs through economics, that will also bring economics to fulfilling social good. So it serves both purposes. The subtle energies are infinite, so it serves to fill in the gap that materials can never fill. Material economy will always be finite, but we need infinitely expanding economy. So in this way, the quantum economics that I'm suggesting is a solution to all the problems with Adam Smith capitalism. It even solves, I have shown in the book, that it solves the boom and bust cycle, the one stubborn problem with Adam Smith, whichever version we have picked, even with the demand side, even with supply side, even with monetary economics, all the materialist stuff of consumer interest and getting out of the recession through consumerism, nothing has worked to really solve the boom and bust cycle. But including subtle energy in the equation of economics does it.
But I think we're getting to a point where how many cell phones can you possibly need? How many flat screen TVs? I mean, granted they build them to break, and so you have to replace them every few years because they break, but I don't need a new TV every year.
Yeah, right. And for TV, we definitely don't need it. But have you noticed that they make computers and cell phones in such a way that every now and then the old stuff, old machine will just not be able to handle the new machines, which some people will buy, and therefore they build the pressure. Oh, you have to buy the new one because otherwise you are not keeping up with other people. Of course, consumers have to get together and they have to agree that nobody buys the new machine because the old machine is adequate.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it makes me think of like the Bluray DVD players. I don't have one, and I don't think people are jumping on that bandwagon, even though that technology is there. Even though I think the media, they're trying to push it because then they'll get to the point that they'll say, oh, well, we're not going to make regular DVDs anymore. We're only going to make Blu-rays. And so if you don't have a Blu-ray player, you're SOL.
We need a consumer revolution, consumer revolt to get over these ways that they handle. But this also leads to wastage of material resources, completely unnecessary. Instead, we need to cut short technologies which have reached the saturation point of people's use. Sure, the experts and people who need much more computing power, they can have all the recent stuff. But ordinary people just do not need so much computing power in their cell phone, and now even watches. Of course, I don't think not too many people will buy those watches because they're so costly. So, but this is the madness, information processing, and what we need instead in the developed economies is meaning processing. People are ready for going back to mind, going back to meaning, going back to their soul, going back to spiritual values. And this is all because the material needs are basically being satisfied in the developed countries. So we are ready to move on. And the short-sightedness of the economists is what is keeping us from moving on. Quantum economics is filling the gap.
But, you can't charge people, meditation by the hour. So I think they have problems with that.
Yeah. We have to change some mindset. We have to recognize that meditation teachers and Tai Chi teachers, they bring happiness to us. They bring vital energies to us, and therefore they do need to be paid. And that will start a new labor force, that starts the new economy. And the idea is very simple. People who give us happiness, people who give us vital energy, people who give us mental meaning, they are helping us. They are as much helping us as people who give us cell phones and people who give us computers, desktops and laptops. And so, we have to start honoring the production of the subtle, just as we have to learn to consume the subtle, because then the intermediary of material is gone, and that would only produce good, because the material consumption cannot be sustained. So if we cut short on the material consumption and go gung-ho on the subtle energy consumption, then we will get sustainability as a new word.
Okay. Not that we would be harmed as a species to not have all of this technology. I mean, we don't need to have internet. We don't need to have TV. We don't need to have it. But if we stop investing energy into material goods, what about the evolution of I'm going to say technology. I mean, do we even need to keep going down that road of developing more and more technology, or can we just take that energy and focus it somewhere else?
Well, that's the thing. We don't have to give up entirely on things. Internet, I think, overall is here to stay. So, I'm very careful about not dreaming of things of getting rid of something that is already in place and which is potentially a good thing. Although, internet is mainly used for pornographers and pornography lovers, but still, really, it's true. But
That's why I love you, Amit. You just call it like you see it.
well, it is like that. But it has potentiality. It has potentiality to connect us. It is an amazing thing that, even if you were in Texas here and I'm in Oregon, but even if you were here and I was in India, even then we could keep on Skype, although the time difference, frankly, makes it quite difficult even then. But remote places on Earth is connected through Skype, through Internet. So this is something not to be thrown away. This is precious. In quantum terms, we need these local connections to access the non-local oneness that we all have. So this local connection is a very good thing, because otherwise the non-local connection only remains potentiality. It never is actualized. To actualize my non-local connection with you, I got to make connections like this, where I am talking to you on Skype and looking at your picture. That makes me directly correlated with you. So we have a relationship, and that's important. If all people of the earth, more and more people start having local relationships, getting into a non-local relationship becomes much easier. And that is wholeness, that's spirituality, and that's important eventually for the success of quantum economics, success for making people happy, making people more loving, making violence go away, and stuff like that, which we need, which we badly need.
What do you mean by non-local relationship?
Yes, good. I'm glad you asked that. I have a habit of throwing out jargon without explaining it. Okay, so local requires signal. Non-local is signal-less communication. Local communication, like we are using electromagnetic signals for communicating. Non-local does not need any signals to communicate. So it's instantaneous, and it works because we have a oneness underneath. We are both connected through non-local consciousness, our consciousness at a very deep level. We usually call this consciousness unconscious, but that is a misnomer in a way. It has stuck, so we are stuck with the name. But this unconscious that Freud first introduced and Jung further developed, that unconscious quantum physics now takes to a much bigger proportion. It is the reservoir of all potentialities that we have, and that is the non-local reality. Through it, any person who is correlated to another person through local can communicate whenever they are ready, whenever they can access. There is some learning to do here, but we can learn how to access, how to communicate through non-local channels. And it is quite wonderful. Only thing is that you cannot predict and control this channel. You have to learn some ways to access it, but you can never control it. You can never be sure that you have non-local connection. It has to be in consonance with the movement of consciousness. So every social system have to remember this other criterion that we thought, we really thought it's something else. Because when Adam Smith was talking about invisible hands of the free market, he certainly was not thinking about movement of consciousness. But that's what it is. There is a constraint on everything. If things that humans do are in consonance with movement of consciousness, then it goes easier because the non-local connections work and keep things in shipshape. But if, on the other hand, we go against the movement of consciousness, as we are doing now with the incomplete philosophy of scientific materialism and with terrorism, with bigotry of religious kind, we are really, really violating the movement of consciousness. And look at the world. We are talking about drought and rain in Texas in summertime, and these ungodly temperatures in Delhi where people are dying. On the other hand, snow wet places in May. This is just ridiculous. And we are getting it all because of the tendency that we have developed going against the movement of consciousness.
Well, and it sounds like when you talk about this non-local relationship, and I'm just going to throw out a very kind of simplistic term to represent all of this, but kind of like a telepathic communication or telepathic connection to one another and the world around us. Would that be a correct assessment, simplistically speaking?
Absolutely, completely correct assertion, and more. It's not just telepathy. Now we can have creative ideas together. So we both ponder a problem that's affecting both of us. We both prepare about it, and then even though we are sitting in different places, our local communications like this will be helped through non-local communications that will go on, and that will enhance the chance of getting a creative breakthrough for either one of us. So scientific collaboration, artistic collaboration, any kind of collaboration, cooperation between doctors. Sometimes we need expertise from a person who is thousands of miles away. How do we get it? Today we need local transports to get people to the place needed. But now with non-local channels open and more our ability to access it, we can get such expertise together, both locally and non-locally, much better in a creative venture. Healing is kind of creative. There's a creative element in healing, which is often ignored when we think only in terms of scientific materialism. So, yeah, telepathy-like, but much more general, much more conducive to solving problems. Now that we are getting full understanding of what goes on in telepathy.
And is this kind of like the idea of if you have multiple people together focusing on an item, it creates an energy behind it so that it can move forward better, easier, stronger, and potentially manifest into the world or impact the physical world?
Yes, I mean, we've got the right idea. It's going to revolutionize businesses, because what businesses used to call brainstorming now can be done at a much more profound level. Brainstorming, basically, the originally conceived was the idea that people have strong opinions about things, but they are afraid to voice it because they will be ridiculed. So the idea of brainstorming that, okay, everybody gives judgment under suspension. We won't ridicule you. That's the promise. You can say anything you like. But that wasn't enough. It wasn't very successful. Even though we do that, we just weren't very successful because people were not listening to each other and they were not giving their unconscious a chance to intervene. See, at the conscious level, processing is good. Processing is important. We call it preparation in creativity, but it's not enough. We also have to allow the unconscious to process that which we prepare. And it is the unconscious which multiplies the possibilities to enormous extent, and then consciousness can choose the new possibilities that will solve the problem. So quantum physics and quantum worldview suggest a new way of doing brainstorming. And this, too, is part of how we change the businesses today with quantum economics. We allow people to allow time in between their responding to somebody's opinion. In that time, unconscious takes over, the collective unconscious, everybody's consciousness together, and possibilities proliferate. And then the chance that you'll have a creative idea when you respond is much greater. And this is what businesses have to learn.
Well, and I was wondering how the quantum physics fit into all of this, but it's starting to unfold.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite beautiful. My friend Dr. Jim Alvino and I have established a quantum economics business coaching, a new organization which will be connected with quantum activism movement, of course. And we are going to take this door to door to businesses. That look, we have some new stuff to teach you, and quantum economics, the new paradigm to give us the umbrella for all these new ideas. And if you learn these new techniques, you will join the 21st century business properly, in the proper way. Because 21st century business has to go beyond materialist economics. It's just not working for them. So in what ways, like, I'll give you an example of how subtle economics might work, will work. Take the case of oranges and common cold. Now, everybody knows, and research confirms that if you have a cold, you take oranges, you feel better. It really does relieve some of the symptoms of common cold. Oranges, they do. So Linus Pauling, who was a great scientist who recently died, Nobel laureate and all, so he got the idea that it must be the vitamin C in oranges. And for a while, you remember, vitamin C was the big hoopla of, how it cures common cold. But of course, people didn't really get much help, except for, of course, that's a little bit of placebo effect. So for some people, it seemed to work for a while. But when they took surveys and when they took clinical studies, the relationship just was not there. Vitamin C does not cure common cold. So, what was wrong? Oranges do, but vitamin C doesn't. But you cannot eat too many oranges because, then you will get fat, and too much sugar, of course, is not good for anybody. So what to do? And this is where the idea of vital energy comes in. The healing power of oranges for common cold comes from the vital energies associated with the macro shape of the oranges, the macro functions of the oranges. So it's at the macro level. When you take molecules of vitamin C out of the oranges, the vital energies are left out. Now, we have a technology now for using which we can take the vital energy of the oranges at the same time as we take out the molecules and then put back into the molecules when we sell the molecules. So we call this vitalized vitamin C. And this vitalized vitamin C, my prediction is, will cure common cold. And so, this is the kind of technology, vitalized water, vitalized rice. Everybody is suffering from Monsanto rice. We don't even know that Monsanto rice, because it's genetically modified, does not have the vital energies that ordinary rice gives us. And that vital energy is as important as the carbohydrate and little protein that rice has. So what do? Well, we reject Monsanto rice. We go back to the original rice, but the original rice also has a problem because it is now grown in such a way, organic rice is one thing, but rice that we get from supermarkets, cheap rice would not be organic. There would be rice grown with chemicals and stuff that also does not modify, genetically modify. The forms are the same, but the forms will be contaminated, not as pure to maintain the correlation with the vital energies. So here also we revitalize food items that are grown with processed chemicals, chemical processing, or preservatives that are added. In these cases, we can put the vital energies back in, and then the food will become better. So in this way, there's enormous scope. Billions and billions of dollar new industries can be developed using the vital energy concept, using the vital energy technology.
And that's the part that I don't understand. When we talk about capitalism and consumer economics, it's about demand and, meeting the needs. And to me, to everyone that I know, they want to eat good, wholesome food. And when you go to the supermarket, you think you're getting things that are good for you. But that's not what's being made. That's not what's being marketed. And then when you start getting into things like the GMOs, it's like they're bringing them in the back door. So you go and you get an orange and you think you're getting it's an orange. It should be healthy. And then you find out that there are all these chemicals or preservatives or,
Right.
well, not preservatives, but, insecticides, or it might be a GMO. And it's like, but that's not what we want.
Right, right. And this is a peculiar situation where ignorance, instead of being bliss, is really harming us. Ignorance because we don't know about vitality. We just don't realize that why we get fat with supermarket food, you cannot get fat with organic food. It's really true. Why we get fat with supermarket food is that we eat too much because it does not satisfy. It does not satisfy because it's not giving us the vital energy that should be giving us, that it should be giving us, that organic food would have given us. So, of course, people who can afford organic food, I suggest, well, go back to organic food right now. But, of course, many of us just cannot afford. There is no question. Organic food right now is not plenty available. The scarcity keeps the price high. But as we realize that, look, we got to get back to as much we can to organic food, then first of all, the price of organic food will come down. But as I said, the revitalizing technology will save even ordinary food, because ordinary food will then be vitalized. We'll get the vital energy from ordinary supermarket bought food, and then it will satisfy. And so this obesity problem that is happening in America, just rampant, this obesity problem, the real solution, of course, I like Hillary Clinton's idea to keep not Hillary Clinton, sorry, Mrs. Obama's idea of keeping the soft drinks out of children's hand. But the point is that that's only a small portion of it. It's the whole food industry that needs to be vitalized. And as soon as we vitalize it, I predict that the obesity problem will be solved, because we won't feel like eating too much. You go to countries like India, where these preservatives, etc., are not used that much. What you get is coming from the farms directly, and you get some access, although there too, Monsanto is a huge problem. The genetically modified, this idea is catching up. So you have to be careful. But if you don't get the genetically modified stuff, but things that are coming from the farm, you have more access to farm products, organic products in places like India. And you see right away, in India, you can eat all you wish and you don't get fat, because it does not have the problem of this vital energy has not been stripped off. And so it satisfies. You can eat lesser quantities. So you are feeling that you are eating all you want, but actually you are eating lesser quantities because you are satisfied sooner.
But they're also not eating McDonald's, or they're not eating, Domino's pizza, or, you go to the supermarket and, okay, so I'm dating myself here, but I remember in college where we could go down to the farmer's market and for, $10 come home with 2 giant bags of groceries. And now you go into the supermarket, because the farmer's markets are, depending on where you live, you may or may not have one. But even when you go into the supermarket, it seems like the produce section keeps getting smaller so that they can incorporate more prepackaged, pre-made stuff that they want people to buy, which they never get my money. So. Yeah,
well, it makes things worse. And we are also, so we need some consumer education. But the education will come. That is, of course, a problem, I admit. That the biggest problem for installing the new economics will be the education of not only the business people, the producers, the investors, but also the consumers themselves. But several things will help, which is that the worldview will change. And as the worldview changes, people will not only want to get meaningful jobs, which already is happening, but also will realize that we don't need to overeat, we don't need to overbuy consumer goods in order to be happy. This needing to be quick happy, this is what gets us into places like McDonald's and pizzas and so forth. That quick idea of quick happiness. But there is direct access to happiness without going through this material intermediary. That worldview is just been lost. We used to have that worldview. Worldviews affect people slowly, but the effect is definitely very devastating because you grew up with that idea. There is evidence that suggests that between age 2 and 7, we just imitate people. We just imitate the people who are growing up. So if our parents like hamburgers and pizzas, then we just catch on to that. We cannot help it. We are too vulnerable. We are almost like hypnotized little kids, just following our children, following our parents blindly. So that being the case, how important it will be to re-educate the entire culture. But once we do that, then the cultural conditioning will automatically change the next generation because kids pick up what the parents do blindly, as I said, in a hypnotized way. So changes can come pretty fast. Worldview has to change, however. So that's the trick. But worldview has to change because quantum physics is compulsory. People have tried to overturn quantum physics for almost 100 years. Nothing doing. Quantum physics is here to stay. And make no mistake about it. So what is quantum worldview saying? Quantum worldview is saying that scientific materialism, the idea that matter moves in space and time, one domain of reality, is just simply wrong. There is this other domain of reality, domain of potentiality. Objects are possibilities, and consciousness chooses out of the possibility the event of our experience. In other words, whatever we experience, including the material world, comes through the intermediary of consciousness. There is nothing that is substantial in the world without the intervention of consciousness. Consciousness does matter. Consciousness does the world. Consciousness does experiences. So this idea, sooner or later, it's going to take over because it's just true. It's experimentally verified, and it's being verified day to day by better and better experiments. When the worldview changes, you will see that this kind of consumer education will not be as daunting as it seems now.
How do you think these changes will affect the political environment? Will they have to be transformed as well?
The political environment is a story that's the next thing, next book for me. For me, it is important. Yes, really, very seriously. Quantum politics. I'm beginning to write now with an Australian guy named Will Hamilton, and this is a very important thing because what is happening with politics is, democracy works because we elect representatives who then will empower us and lift us up. This is the whole idea of democracy. Democracy is complete antidote to what was before feudalism. There was complete elitism. The upper echelon of the society, which are few, they control and they basically act as dictators, set the policies, set the society for the numerous serfs that follow the lead of these barons, the leaders. This used to be the case of feudalism, but we got over it. We got over it in the 18th century. We got three good ideas: capitalistic economics, and democracy, and liberal education. Now we are talking about democracy, and there the idea is that although people are not empowered right now, but if political power is given to representatives who will then use their power to empower the people through education, through economics, capitalism, then people will be empowered. Such empowered people will go up in status, and eventually the elitism will be completely gone via the creation of the middle class. Middle class will be making the leaders, political leaders, as well as economic leaders, and so forth. And the mobility is called American Dream. Everybody who works hard enough will get to go there. But this is now completely gone. As you have noticed in the press, there is some recognition of elitism, and people have started paying lip service to elitism, but they're not really doing anything, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans, except some notable exception like Senator Elizabeth Warren, whom I respect very much. But really, even Obama, who is sort of in between, but still basically an elitist. So what do we go from there? This very important point, elitism got to go because it's not consonant with democracy, or democracy got to go. If we choose democracy got to go, it will be total chaos. You have no idea, live under dictators. That's the alternative, really. As you are finding out in Middle East, dictators were gone. It was total chaos because they're not ready for democracy. We are having democracy for so many 100 years. To give that up in favor of feudalism and dictatorship, it's unthinkable. So obviously you have to find a remedy, and the remedy is, of course, back to the idea of Jeffersonian democracy, where the leaders will work to empower people, ordinary people. And that's how democracy works. Ordinary people got to participate. They don't participate anymore. In this country, 50% of the people don't vote. What is participation? It hardly exists. And that's why the Republican Party, which is the party of the feudalism, the religious feudalism philosophy, they continue to hold so much power. If we have people empowered so that people participate, so that people vote, we'll drive the rascals out in no time and start a new democracy of the Jeffersonian type, where political leaders will not keep the power for themselves, but will distribute the power, empower people, and things will become democratic again. Education is crucial for both quantum economics and quantum politics.
Do you think that by bringing in this new paradigm, it will help level out the playing field, where people of any class, any background, any race, color, creed, whatever, will be able to have a say, participate, and move forward into some of these areas?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As we begin to empower people, we'll see unprecedented human potential being satisfied, especially in the developed economies first, but it will catch on to an extent, to some extent, very quickly. So the underdeveloped economies will follow quick enough. So in a century or two, we'll see completely a new world. How far, we are stuck with this good, evil battle mythology right now. So, it's very hard for some people to imagine a world of good without so much evil, but it will happen. That's a trend. I mean, that trend we can see. Europe has not had a war since when? Since the end of World War II. I mean, that's just amazing. For 70 years, Europe was constantly fighting, constantly battling, has not had a major battle, major war. And there's a little bit of Bosnia, but, quite minor. So, of course, we have problems with Middle East, and those problems are really quite difficult problems. But the solution can be pointed out. Solution is one and only. We have to remove this absolutely incomplete worldview of scientific materialism. We got to remove the bigoted, dogmatic, fundamentalist religious hold on people. And those two can be integrated in the quantum worldview, and then we get social systems such as quantum economics and quantum politics and quantum education that will finally get us set in the proper road to proper human evolution, where human potentials will be fulfilled, like the American dream says that it should be.
What role, if any, will money play into this whole thing? As we're talking, and I read your book, what kept jumping into my mind, and sorry for my connection here, was on Star Trek, for example, and this is where I'm going. On Star Trek, they had no money. They had evolved past the need for money. Do you think that that's something that will happen on this planet at some time in the future?
Well, it may, everything is possible. So I never say, in quantum physics, you never say no to hardly anything.
Because of those half-dead cat possibilities, I know.
But I think that really, I know right now, because money has caused so much imbalance in the society, because, that has become sort of a demigod to so many people, that very serious-minded, very intelligent economists are suggesting that we give up the money idea altogether. But I don't subscribe to that, because if we take quantum economics, then what happens is that the money can be employed to buy things that are good to us, good for us, like love and happiness. The idea is so simple. You produce a person who is mentally and soulfully situated. But what that means is that this person has access to real wholeness. And that wholeness is so real that if you sit in the proximity of such a person, you will start feeling happy. This is the breakthrough. So all we need is to learn how to produce such people of wholeness. And we have now the technology, we have the understanding of quantum creativity, which can do it in a hurry. So we can really produce ways, human capital, which can be used to directly sell people happiness and love. When money can be used to buy happiness and love, not following the old dictum, money cannot buy love, defying the old dictum, in fact, when money can be used for buying good stuff, not just pleasureful stuff. Today, we get money and we buy it with which, things that gives us temporary pleasure, like good clothes and hamburgers and so forth. But then it will always followed by pain. If you eat too many hamburgers, you get fat. Clothes, they're lying in the closet because you don't like them after a while. They saturate. This is the problem with pleasure. It does not last. Whereas happiness, on the other hand, it lasts. You start going to the company of these sages. In India, we call them satsang. When you are having the company of sages, you are in satsang. And the satsang will start changing you. And you will gradually lose the attraction towards pleasure, which is temporary. Instead, will become attracted to happiness, which is permanent. It changes you permanently. You become more happy, more positive. There's already a branch of psychology called positive psychology, which is coming in vogue, and they make the same point. Negativity is evil. Positivity, on the other hand, is good. So as we choose the good, society itself becomes modified, okay? And therefore, this kind of problems will be just non-existent.
Well, and if you look at the world today, it's like our focus is really on the negative. All you have to do is turn the TV on or pick up a newspaper. Everything is focused on the negative.
Yeah, and we have a natural tendency to that. We cannot blame people because we really do have, sociobiologists are not completely wrong. We really do have the brain wired for negative emotions. We call it negative emotional brain circuits. So this has been a huge problem, and of course this is why so many violent episodes in human history, they all come from these negative emotional brain circuits, Genghis Khan and the cruelty of the ancient Roman Empire and all this, World War II, Hitler, all of this is the subject of negative emotional brain circuits. We can go on and on. On ordinary people's life, they manifest as the simple attraction to sex and violence. So we watch sex and violent movies, and we watch pornography on the internet, and all this stuff that goes on. We cannot help it. These circuits are there in the brain. What human being is, of course, is not just the brain and what is already in the brain. Human beings also have consciousness and the subtle worlds. And this is the subtle world that we are gradually learning to use. And as we are learning more and more and more and more, and now with the quantum worldview in place, we are learning with absolute certainty that there is a subtle world of archetypes from which our intuitions come. These intuitions bring us positive emotions. When you have an intuition of love, if you follow it through and cultivate it, you will start feeling that your heart, that's called, in the Eastern tradition, it's called the heart chakra, that your heart will feel open. It's more open to accepting people. It's more open to love people. And this is what happens when you become sensitive to your intuition. That balances the tendency to be negative. So it's not a process with which we are unfamiliar. Of course, we know so many people, including our grandmothers and our aunts, mother and father, of course, and, they are so loving, at least to their children. How does that happen? Because when you become a parent, when you become a grandparent, you are a little bit more tuned towards loving to at least to your children, to your grandchildren. And then you hear these intuitions. So there too, negative emotions are there, but you can balance it with the positive emotions that come to us via intuitions. There are, of course, bad parents, and there are, of course, evil grandmothers, but that's not very common at all, because we have that much of wisdom already. And this wisdom we can pursue with quantum economics wonderfully, because as people learn to consume love and happiness, as people learn to consume better vital energies, positive emotions, then they also become emotionally more intelligent.
That would be good. Do you think we are finally relearning things that our ancestors knew thousands of years ago? Because, you're talking about the chakras, and you're talking about vital energy and subtle energy, which are talked about in the Puranas in a number of different texts that come out of India and other spiritual traditions. And so have we lost that? Have we lost that knowledge in ourselves because of this whole capitalistic model?
Well, what happened is more complex than just that. Of course, there is a grain of truth in what you're saying. But if we remember the complexity of it, when modernism came about, back in the 16th century, you have to notice what the world was. The technology of modern warfare came to the Westerners first, to Europeans, and the Europeans developed Eurocentrism. They are the center of the world, basically, and they colonized the rest of the world, more or less. And so that, unfortunately, denigrated all the wisdom that was contained in the other parts of the world, and limited us to only the European part of the wisdom. And that was unfortunate. The European part of the wisdom was saddled with popular Christianity. And popular Christianity has never carried the message of great masters like Jesus, although there are always exceptions. And Christianity has its own revolt. The Protestantism grew out of the original Christians, but they didn't do much better because it was head-centered. The heart was not in the picture in the way that Christianity dominated the West. This was the basic problem. The heart was abandoned. Women, of course, carries much more heart energy than men, traditionally in all cultures. and women were denigrated in the West, very much so. Of course, not as much as some of the other, like Islamic cultures, but still denigrated to the extent that the heart never really recovered. And so, what we are seeing now with the advent of Eurocentrism going away, with the coming of the East into America and Europe, uh, colonialism falling apart, all these things have helped us to reunite the East and West. And so the heart is coming back in a major way. And just at that time, movement of consciousness is producing a unification of science and spirituality, a scientific integration of science and spirituality. That again, you know, the brain, role of the brain, the head is obvious. Nobody has to teach you that. But the role of the heart is subtle, and people will have to learn that. But once we learn it, it's so wonderful. It's so wonderful to be able to love somebody. It's so wonderful to be able to care for somebody. But you have to wake up to it. You have to do it. You have to believe that it can be done. And the belief comes from the prevalent science. Right now, the prevalent science is scientific materialism. The heart doesn't exist. Only head, only rational thinking, because head is just a computer. But when that gives way to quantum worldview, then consciousness comes back with all these subtle energies, and then we have positive as well as negative emotions. We have feelings as well as thinking, and the heart comes back.
Excellent. I'm looking at the clock, and we need to take a quick break, okay?
Okay.
We'll come back on the other side. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're here talking to Dr. Amit Goswami about his book, Quantum Economics. His webpage is amitgoswami.org, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Hello, and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. We've been here talking to Dr. Amit Goswami about his book, Quantum Economics, Unleashing the Power of Economics of Consciousness, hang on a second. Unleashing the Power of an Economics of Consciousness. That's a little bit of a tongue twister. His website is amitgoswami.org. Amit, I'm going to change our focus here a little bit from what we were talking about in the first hour, and let's spend a little bit of time talking about upward causation, which I love talking about this concept. How can a shift in our consciousness help to create economic change?
Okay, this is very, very important. How a shift in consciousness can produce economic change. Well, first of all, human mind reacts much better to crisis. So it's a good thing to talk about economic change right now because we just are coming out of a crisis. And when we know what didn't work, and we are doubting, definitely we are doubting more when we are in the thick of the recession. Now we are doubting less. Already economists have forgotten that they have said just a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, that current economics is not working. We really need major modifications. But now nobody is speaking like that. Okay, so that's human nature. But we are aware, ordinary people are aware that we have a field which even has Nobel Prizes now, but it's really an empty field. There is just no basic anything that people can know with guarantee, with any kind of force of truth in it. Basically, economics is in a situation where Adam Smith did some very good work, and subsequently Keynes added to it. And that's what I call classical economics. And then just emptiness, and emptiness, false ideas, like we can make economics mathematical. Lots of Nobel Prize, but no product that will ever last, simply because human nature is not machine. Humans are not machine, and therefore you cannot predict behavior of humans by mathematics. It should be pretty obvious. It's the upward causation model just doesn't work because, that way elementary particles govern us, but everyone who has anything to do with economics knows that those consumers, they're stubborn human beings. However much you say that, well, I know the key to consumer behavior, I have the mathematical equations of consumer behavior, I have the game theory, and I have Nobel winners in this mathematics, however much you propound all this, still the consumer will not agree with you. You can make bubbles, you can think, for a while you can get things going as if things are working like you predicted, but eventually the bubble bursts. And why does the bubble burst? Because the consumer is a human being. It's not a machine. You could not predict the behavior of a human being so completely. And this is the reason that we will have a change in economic change, and people will accept that we cannot be sidestepped by this material influx of ideas like mathematical economics. We cannot go on destroying capitalism by having this financial alternative of financial banking, investment in financial banking. That is a little bit elucidation, so go into it if you want me to. But the production consumption economy is the one that ordinary people are involved with. And that just has to recognize that we are human beings. We have experiences other than material experiences of the subtle. We have those needs. And if we develop an economics which can figure out how to use those needs in a suitable way in economics to run our economy, then that's the economy that we'll embrace. So in that way, economic change, I can readily see, will come fairly quickly. Of course, the powers that be, establishment will try to resist, but I think that the problem of recession is now so severe. We are getting recession every 2-3 years, and we are really not even getting a proper recovery. We really never have recovered in the true sense of recovery from the Great Recession as of yet. Europe is already under recession again. America probably within a couple, 3 years will be again under recession. So if this is the situation, something got to give. And the worldview change and all this is simultaneously taking place. Again, something got to give. In the world of science, something got to give. So everywhere change is coming. How quickly is the only question. So, this is why I have set up quantum activism. We have to be activists and actively propound the quantum worldview that integrates, that does not have all these problems that scientific materialism has brought to us.
In recent years, there have been a number of, I'm going to say, like young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who have gone and created something, and I'll just, like Google or YouTube or, some thing, doesn't have to be a computer thing, and have turned them into big companies, very successful. Do you think that where a lot of this change will come will be from individuals who are dissatisfied with the current work model, where you go and you work for somebody else and, on an assembly line somewhere, and they look to create something from themselves, because that brings them happiness? Do you think that will kind of spur on this new model of economics?
Absolutely, you bet. What we'll have very soon is that somebody will become aware that there is a scope of making billions of dollars, big bottom line profit, by investing in vital energy technology. This is the new one. Mental energy, mental meaning we really already employ to some extent. Books, videos, movies, they're all in some ways representations of mental meaning, although it has moved away from the potentiality of using mental meaning in the fullness. So lots of change has to come in those fields too. But it is the vital energy field that is new, that is attractive, that is revolutionary, and that is tremendously money-making. We discussed food industry before, but take another industry, home industry, housing industry, which is really a major one. All recessions, it stops when the housing starts building again. And that's not kidding. That's really true. Housing is major for human beings. We all need shelter. Now the question is how to make the house better to live. If you have ever lived in a new house, you would know that a new house is not very livable. It's very strange. It's new, it's wonderful, paint smell is gone, so you cannot blame it to something as gross as smell of paint. That's not the issue. Or you can get the lawn okayed by the people who sold it. So, all this stuff can be done, but still, when you move into a brand new house, you won't feel that you are very happy here. You're a bit uneasy, and then after a while, you have lived there. Then it becomes okay. It's very strange. This is the reason that people don't get rest in hotel rooms, because in hotel rooms also likewise, different people are coming and different people are living. So it does not produce the kind of rest. Why is that? This is because whenever you are somewhere, the place becomes associated with your vital energy, correlated with your vital energy. And it keeps some of that vital energy imprint even when you leave. So in hotels, this vital energy is always changing, and your own energy just is not there. It takes a while, and one night is just not enough. In a house, it's interesting because you will stay there, and therefore the energy will gradually become comfortable to you. But suppose we sell houses in a different way. We have this human capital of greatly loving people, happy people, and every house, before you sell them, you invite one of these persons to inhabit the house for about a few weeks to a month or few months. And then you sell the house. Imagine you move in and immediately the house, instead of being slightly uneasy for you, is actually the opposite. It's even better vital energy than you have. So it's actually giving you loving energy, giving you happy energy. So in this way, housing industry, when we understand the concept of vital energy and learn to use it properly, will just become very, very wonderful and very, very attractive to buy new houses. And it just won't be a problem to sell new houses.
Well, and that's interesting. I would still be available, but I don't think people understand the value of this. But it fits in there. But I would go to people's homes that they were trying to sell and do energy work on them, and clear the energy so that, anything that was negative the house was holding on to would filter off and the houses would sell faster.
Yeah.
All kinds of miraculous things would happen if there, as I like to say, there wasn't bad mojo in the house.
Yeah. You were energy sensitive to already knew that. But this is the thing, and we can even make it better by, some people have wonderful ideas about sacred geometry. If you use this sacred geometry, the energization, revitalization of these houses will go even faster. We have lost this ability of using geometry to make houses more conducive to vital energy. These things like Feng Shui and Vastu in India. These things will come back in a hurry as soon as you pay attention to vital energy technologies, and will revolutionize the housing industry. Cosmetics, perfume, these are, of course, health. I already talked about vitamin C and common cold and devitalized vitamin C. But already, alternative medicine, it's hugely available, but not enough. Not enough to even make a dent in the total medical industry. But if we have integrative medicine, which will use vital energies equally in par with allopathy, with conventional medicine, we have a cheaper, better medicine system to help people. And that is, again, a huge portion of the economy. 1/6 of our economy is medicine, of health related. So I'm talking about real change in the economic scene that we are envisioning with quantum economics.
Well, and one of the things we were talking about your book this morning over breakfast, and one of the things that that passed by me, but my boyfriend made the comment because I was talking about how in your book you were talking about sustainability and organic produce and different things that he and I have talked about in the past. And, and his comment was that, there's a lot more people leaning in that direction. And my comment back to him, and I'd like your take on it, is that, there are so many people that are in kind of a financial crunch. You work all these hours to make the money that you can make, but then you have to pay your rent, pay these bills, get your insurance, whatever that is. And so your disposable income to do things like buy food, whatever it is, becomes more limited. And so people out of an economic concern are starting to look at having little gardens in their backyard or looking at doing things that are more sustainable. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it, definitely. I mean, this trend of having your own garden, there was a comic strip that I like in the newspapers. What's the name of it? Anyway, they have a little garden that they plant every year, and finally this year they get a little traction. Some of their plants are growing. That's very timely to remind people that okay, you can even grow plants even if you have not succeeded before. You can succeed now, and so yes, that will be part of the mindset change. But remember, again, as the worldview changes, will not have the squeeze of the middle class that gets us into situations where people constantly have to think of how to subsidize their incomes because middle class is really being squeezed. But in the quantum worldview, middle class will start growing again. So why should we have our backyard garden? Not because we are squeezed, because we're economically depressed, but because we want to. That's the worldview change. And when we want to, things go much faster. We want to because that's the best food we can get because we grow it with love. And look, gardening is just so wonderful for developing the feelings of security in you. I mean, the chakra medicine, which quantum physics fully support, we say that gardening is one way of getting rooted in your body. And today, people live so far away from their body because they live in the brain, they live in their head. So one of the big challenges is to bring people back to the body, and gardening does that. So things like gardening will be very popular with the new worldview. As soon as people learn, we don't even have to install the new worldview fully. We just have to educate like we are doing right now, because what happens is that people don't have security. This is why you have so much fear, which adds to insecurity of the root chakra, the chakra connected with our eliminative organs like the anus. So what happens? We are always fearful about anything that is new, and these politicians and these economics businesses, they're always taking advantage of our fear-based society. Instead, if we are rooted, if energy is plenty in the root chakra, then what happens is that we can attend to our higher needs, which needs are needs of love, open the heart chakra, needs of expression, open the throat chakra, needs of intuition, needs of creativity, open the two chakras of the upper brain, which is the chakra between the eyebrows, brow chakra, and the crown chakra at the top of the head, which is related to neocortex and mind processing. So, these chakras are not getting any attention right now because all we can do today to bring back our body centeredness is to watch sex and violence. Yes, they give us a little bit of relief because the sexual center and the third chakra, the navel center, gets a little bit attention from these things that we are constantly using. But that's not very much. Still does not remove the fear, that the fear of insecurity that we have, and things like gardening, things like I'm talking about economic, bring back love and wholeness in our economic equation. Things like that will give us that.
Well, and I feel like when we start getting back into ourselves, back into our body, it will give us the ability to discern better and recognize things that are in the world that are controlling us versus, and not satisfying our needs or not for our highest good, and give us the opportunity to make better choices.
Yeah. That better choices is the right word. You mentioned upward causation versus downward causation before. Downward causation is choice. We have possibilities all the time, especially in advanced economies of the world. People have so many possibilities to fulfill. But why do we make wrong choices? Why, when we are hungry at night, why are we making choices of eating hamburgers versus brown rice and veggies? These are the questions that people have to deal with, and they will deal with better when they realize that they have the choice, and when the social systems help them in that realization. Right now, the social systems are really not helping because it's increasing the gap between rich and poor. And you were quite right when you said that people just get so bogged down with their economic problems that they are not ready to employ their incentive for higher needs as of yet. When you are tired doing a meaningless job during the days to serve your economic needs, all you want to do in the evening is to flop before the TV, mindless stuff. And all you want to do is watch sex and violence because that will at least embody you a little bit, the lower chakras. But this can be changed by changing the economics to quantum economics. One of the first things to go would be elitism. Elitism is a product of feudal economics. Elitism is a product of when you destroy capitalism. And because we are destroying capitalism, this is why we are getting so much elitism, so much squeeze of the middle class. As the middle class comes back, when middle class becomes creative once again, it will also help to bring into the change in the economy. So the whole thing is dependent on really a lot of synchronous growth between how our mindset changes, which already is changing towards getting more meaningful jobs. Even in the middle of deep recession, really, people did not compromise. Many people held up from taking these low-paying jobs. And eventually, of course, the economy did start turning back, and now meaningful jobs are available, and they are now taking it. So similarly, we have to bring more and more meaningful jobs to people because that's where the demand is. In Portugal, people are just not in Spain. Sorry, I just went to Spain, and I was kind of surprised too, that people are just not taking even high-paying meaningless jobs like plumbing. Instead, they're holding off for a university degree. The unemployment rate is 25%, but still people are not ready to compromise for meaningless jobs. This is a major mind shift, and this mind shift signifies that the movement of consciousness is going to help in terms of deploying quantum economics, because quantum economics changes the equation for labor. It squarely says that labor has value. Labor is not machine. The machine-like things, let machines do them. Let the routine jobs, already machines are taking over. Robots are coming into the industries in a major way. Routine jobs will be done either by robots or by underdeveloped countries, like outsourcing and all that, which is already prevalent. And that's not going to change. It's going to stay that way. So what the average person has to do in the advanced economies is to hold on to their demand that, yes, I will wait for meaningful jobs, and it is the job of the system, the politicians and the economics and the educational system to create meaningful jobs for me. And that demand is what eventually going to be so strong, going to change things in a substantial way. And of course, good-minded politicians never has gone away exactly. So even today, it's quite alive. Like in Senator Bernie Sanders, who is running as a Democrat, you listen to him and you get a little encouraged that yes, changes can come. Politicians are talking about changes in a way that is conducive to the movement of consciousness. Of course, I don't know if Bernie knows about subtle economics, but he can learn. And so I hope people like him get traction in the political system. And, Elizabeth Warren I already have mentioned. So there is hope for politics as of yet. It's not hopeless at all. I think eventually the American ingenuity and creativity will come in, will kick in, and will get our country straight. And will again lead the world in terms of not what we are doing today, bullying the world about, by the force of arms, but instead by the force of love, by the force of heart energy.
Do you think that growing economies will have a better chance of moving through this energy or focusing their economy on this new energy paradigm? Or do you think they'll have to go through this whole materialistic phase before they can become an advanced nation?
I don't think they have to go through the full materialistic phase. I think it's a mistake to go through the full materialistic phase simply by the fact that if these developing economies try to do that, the world will simply become unlivable. Simply become unlivable. Global warming will stop everyone from doing that. So how can they or should they go to quantum economics without satisfying their full spectrum of material needs? Yes, because the material needs have been overblown. We have satisfied our basic material needs 100 years ago. Rest of it really are just inertia. We don't need, as you pointed out earlier, we don't need cell phones and television sets for a very satisfactory, happy life. And I'm not even suggesting cell phones actually can be very cheap. In this country, people demand too much, so, we use it very expensively. But in India, cell phones are relatively cheap. Even poor people can afford them. Because they are used quite in a different way. So some of this technology, if they are just to the medicine is another example. In India, medicines are cheap, but here it's very costly because the pharmaceuticals are very greedy. So it can be done in such a way that the basic material needs can be satisfied, and yet much of the abuse of material needs, that wastes really produce a lot of waste and also produce a lot of pollution that can be avoided. Countries that have not gone through the material phase has the advantage that there will be more spirituality in those countries. India is a perfect example, but there are other examples like Brazil, which has never lost touch with their emotions in the body. They're pretty body-centered. It's such a pleasure for me to teach quantum activism workshops in Brazil because people are naturally emotional. In the West, we are generally in the developed, economically developed West, we are not naturally emotional. Even women are suppressing emotion these days because they have discovered that the way to go up in the corporate ladder is to suppress emotions. This is the wrong trend. The right trend, of course, is to balance head and heart, which is, of course, what quantum economics will do. So, coming back to developing countries, I think it can be done in such a way that they can get into quantum economics right away. And as the subtle energies are available and it is legitimized, people will shift because they have not yet been corrupted by material needs to the extent that people in the West have been corrupted. So, they will be happy to have just a television set and a cell phone, but not get into the excess. Excesses are like people have so many computers in a household. That's an excess. People have so many telephones in the household. That's an excess. This communication, we waste so much money on communication alone today. That's an excess. These excesses, these underdeveloped countries don't need. And there is no need to overblow that part through publicity and marketing. Instead, if the entrepreneurs and the investors went right away in vital energy technologies, people will be very happy to get vitality, and then their needs, material needs, will be minimized anyway because they are getting the real thing without going through the phase of material goodies.
You keep talking about getting back into the heart and accessing the heart. And my experience of when you bring your energy into your heart is that your priorities change and you look at the world in a different way, in a more compassionate way. And so is that kind of what you're looking at with this whole concept, is each of us becoming more compassionate so that extends out into business and community and everyone?
Yes, and I'm suggesting that quantum economics will do that in an unobtrusive way. This is the beauty of it. As we get into subtle energy economics, this is the part where we do not ignore the advancement of marketing techniques that we have had under scientific materialism. I always like to use everything because everything is a movement of consciousness. What the scientific materialists have done, that is not outside the movement. So you don't have to throw away all their innovative ideas. Marketing techniques have improved. And to the extent that if we make subtle energy popular through marketing techniques quickly, we can do it quickly using these techniques, then what will happen is absolutely wonderful, because what will happen is that people will use the vital energy and start being transformed. So what you're suggesting is absolutely true. People will start becoming more and more oriented towards spirituality and wholeness, because all they need is an education, slight education in the worldview that these things are really true. All they need is measurement apparatuses that will show them that these things are really real. For example, somebody says, my heart is open. Before, you could not verify. My favorite scenario is for imagining that a young guy, is proposing to a girl. And he says, oh, I love you, darling, and here's the ring. I want to marry you. And the girl says, wait.
And is she going to be waiting for a long time? Well, I guess we're going to have to wait until we have Dr. Amit Goswami back on the show to find out what happens to that young man. Seems like he's been having a little bit of internet problems. But it's time to go. I'm Dr. Rita. This is Just Energy Radio.